Okay, so this is part two of the major story. Now, the previous part was interrupted because, and it's part of the story itself actually, but I guess I'll just fast forward a little bit and then return in sequence. But I was filming that part one from a guest house at the start of the highway up to Torogot. So it's kind of like the Torogot pre-clearance town, you could call it. And basically, like, there's only 4 hotels in the town, and I went to the first one, and they tried to scam me. The prices are literally on the wall behind reception, and there's like 4 rooms, as you can see, 4 types, and the lowest is, I think it was what was it? It was 90, which is like $12, and then there's like 300. And I'm like, how much is it? And she just goes, oh, we've only got the 300 ones left, which is really expensive. It's like 30 quid for, China. So I was like, oh, I'll have a wander to the other places. Eventually ended up at this kind of hotel hostel that looked like a flashback to 1985 Yekaterinburg, some Soviet-style town. There's that Soviet word Gostina or something like that, which kind of means like guest house hostel. And it looked awful from the outside, but on the inside, oh my God, it was so clean. It was so clean. They did such a good job. But basically, like, they didn't have any private rooms left. So they said, oh, you're going to have to share. And I kind of didn't want to share. Not that I have a problem, staying in hostels or dorms, quite the contrary. It's just, it was a kind of a trucker place. And obviously I was blitzkrieged from this entire ordeal, as highlighted in the previous video. So in the end, there was no other option. There was another hotel I went to that was also super expensive. So I accepted my fate, and that's when I saw how clean it was. So I was quite content. But then she came in to the room, and she was like, actually, we do have a private room now, which was really weird. So and it was also the room right next to reception, and I was getting kind of prostitute vibes from the woman at the counter too, which I will substantiate later in this story with another truck stop hotel. I mean, everyone knows truck stop hotels are notorious for fucking having prostitutes. That's just the reality. So anyway, yeah, so I end up in this room, and I ask her, like, oh, because it's 2 beds. It's a twin room, a private room, 2 beds. And I was like, so, right, okay, so this is just for me? It's a private? And she said, yeah, it's just for you, no one else. I was like, yes, perfect. And I didn't have to pay extra. So I only paid 40, which is like £4. Less than £4. So, I'm doing this video, part one, and all of a sudden, someone's trying to get in the door. I'm just assuming it's a reception. And then I open it, and there's a guy staying on the other bed with me. So clearly they changed their tune. And that's where the video cut off. So I will continue on from that point. And I believe I just watched the end of that video back again. I was walking, yeah. So I was walking on the road, right, because the driver had fucked up and taken me to the wrong border post. And after the tourists had taken these pictures of me, I kept walking, maybe another hour or so. The estimated time was, of course, 6 hours. And then a van stopped. I didn't even ask, I didn't, stick my thumb out or anything, just stopped. And it was a young guy, must have been a teenager, let's say 16. And it turns out he was delivering bread to the border posts, or the border town. And it was just a super nice guy, and he said to me, obviously on Google Translate, he'd seen me already on his way out of the town walking, and having seen me again on his way back, he just felt inclined to stop. And he's a super nice guy, and he saved me like 3.5 hours of walk, and maybe potentially not even getting a place to stay in the town because all the hotels were chock-a-blocked. So we arrive, and he even gives me some garlic bread. I think he thought, everyone thinks I'm homeless when I wear my sandals. I don't know why. People just give me food. They think I'm poor or something. It's really weird. If you wear sandals in China, they lose their shit. I don't know why sandals are such a crazy thing. Sandals and socks, maybe that's it. So yeah, I get to the town, and like I said just in the intro there, basically I went to the customs post and found out that it closed, the Chinese side closed at 8. So basically it meant that it was impossible for me to get now to the border itself, because this was just the pre-clearance at the start of the highway. and there's multiple clearances, and I think the total is basically a flat 100 kilometers basically to the actual borderline. So I was like, oh shit. So I decided to look for the hotels, and then eventually I ended up at the place I stayed. I'm filming this video. This guy walks in to my room after I open it. Turns out it wasn't private, and he's a truck driver. And we get talking, and he's basically telling me there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to get to the checkpoint. Hitchhiking is illegal, so drivers aren't going to pick you up. You know, it's just impossible. There's no public transport. There are no taxis. There is a bus that operates on certain days during the week, and you should take it. And this is the bus that I've already seen in Kashgar, the scammy bus that you have to pay the Bishkek fare for. And I had no intention of going to Bishkek. Literally, the price of this bus is like $85, which is insane for China and Kyrgyzstan. It's a total scam. And yeah, they only stop in Narin as well, but then you'd still have to pay for Bishkek, and I didn't want to go to Bishkek, and I didn't want to go to Narin. I wanted to go to the border because I wanted to go to Tashribat, which is this beautiful Silk Road caravan, basically an old hotel. That's how how the historical narrative they supplant and supply us with depicts this location. I again question all of these historical sites, and especially the narrative. But that's where I wanted to go. So this just wasn't in my tune, and you know, I kind of built up the desire now to kind of get on this road. I love walking and just trying my luck with trucks, and you know, it's all the more challenging when people say you can't do things. So anyway, before this guy showed up, by the way, and before I started filming that, I went into the little town and I exchanged the last of my yuan for Kyrgyz som, and that left me with 2,600 Kyrgyz som. All my Chinese yuan gone, and that was going to get me to Narin, essentially. That was the game plan. So like I said, I was interrupted by this guy. He turned out to be a really cool dude, and now I am in Narin, and this guy has actually texted me, and he said, oh, you know, I'll meet you for a drink tonight, because we ended up betting, we made a bet, that if I was able to get to Tashribat without taking a bus, he would buy me 2 drinks. And he'd already bought me a drink anyway, which was very nice of him. Not an alcoholic drink, a sugary kind of, almost like a Chinese Red Bull. So anyway, we're chatting away, and the door knocks again, right? And basically the receptionist had grassed me up. This wasn't the nice lady receptionist. They'd changed shift, and it was this little slimy guy. And he'd called the police straight away. Because it was the last day of my visa. It was still a valid visa, but it was the last day. And he didn't even know that until I told him anyway. He couldn't even understand the Chinese. He thought my visa expired in May. And the police show up completely fucking shit-faced. Chinese police, drunk as hell. I mean, drunk. And it's like midnight, which is so inappropriate as well to go waking people up. And basically they're like, there's obviously some scam or some kind of deal going on. That's the vibe I got. They're like, oh, there's one bus ticket left. We want you to get the bus. I'm going to book it for you. And I was being as charming as I could possibly be, and it paid off in the end. And there was one lady, 2 chaps, and I was joking with them, playing the kind of fool, saying, no, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Tomorrow morning, it's my last day. It should be sufficient. When I wake up, I'll come up with a plan. All this kind of stuff. So it's going back and forth like this for like 20 minutes of them being drunk and taking pictures and kind of just being generally giggly. And that's the end of that. I managed to get away with it. I wasn't forced to buy a bus ticket, and ended up chatting to some other people, chatting to this guy, and by this point it's like 1:30, and I'm like, actually, if this really is the case that it's going to be so difficult, I've really got to get up super early, because I'd already heard that this border is crazy to get to, and the last stretch is a no man's land as well. So I said to the guy, right, I'm going to get up at like 5:30, and I'm 100% just going to go for it. I'm going to keep walking until someone stops, basically. And he said, okay, what you need to do is you don't need to go to the first customs post. That opens up at 10 a.m. anyway, and that's for trucks. You just want to just keep walking until you reach the first passport post, which is a 2-hour drive from here. So almost, you could say 60% of the way to the end border. So yeah, I got up, pitch black, had my torch on, And I go to open the hotel door, and there's a fucking padlock on it. And, it's dark, and I'm like, I knew they'd do this. It's a frontier town. I'm not going to be able to get out. There's no reception staff on. I don't have WeChat. I don't have a Chinese SIM. There's no way for me to contact any reception staff. And I need to get out. I need to get, on the road before the cars start driving for a chance of like flagging down, vehicles that are heading to the border, because the border also opens at 10. So logically, if you're a vehicle, you'd leave at like 6, just after, when I planned on setting off. So I'm like, oh my God. And I heard the shared toilet flush. I was like, thank God someone's there. And this big burly kind of Russian truck driver comes out, and I say to him on Google Translate, oh, the gate's locked. And he's like, no, 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 no. I was like, yeah, it's a net. And he walks out with his bare feet. It's fucking freezing cold, by the way. It's absolutely, it's super high in altitude. It's really cold. And it turns out in the end, the lock wasn't actually on properly. It was just there, it's just fictitious. It was, just there for the image. And and then he goes to unlock it, and then he starts talking, and I feel really bad because he's helped me. So now I have to listen for like 30 minutes to him telling me that it's impossible to, to go there. The same thing the other guy was saying. He's saying, actually the border's closed. They told us it was closed. I'm a truck driver. I was supposed to be driving today, and I'm sure the border's not open, blah, blah, blah. Everything they say is just fucking bullshit. And after I got rid of him, I ended up doing the walk. And I walked in the pitch black, freezing cold. And actually the police drove past me to get to their posts, because they all originate in the frontier town and then they're driven up to their various posts. And it would have been nice if they had stopped, actually. That would have saved me a lot of time. But clearly it wasn't illegal to walk, as everyone has been saying, because they were whizzing past without a care in the world. And so I walked and I walked and I walked. And in the end, I walked until the sun came up and it got a little bit warmer, albeit I was absolutely frozen. And I was wearing all my warm gear as well. So in the end, I walked 19 kilometers. And then, as is always the case with hitchhiking or with people that offer to stop for you, it's always the poorest people, the people with the least amount of money, the worst vehicles, and the worst for wear. A guy stops, almost semi-autistic, on the biggest banger motorbike I've ever seen. Bearing in mind, 19 kilometers in, I've had hundreds and hundreds of cars whiz past me. I don't know why. Is this being laggy? It looks really laggy, this video. Turn the internet off. Hopefully that makes a difference. I don't know. This phone is an absolute piece of shit. I need to transfer to the other one. Anyway, so this guy stops on this absolute banger of a bike. It just, you could hear it for miles before it arrived. It was absolutely shattered, covered in caked and dust, and he's got a little pink backpack on. But I feel like it's not because he's perhaps, batting for the other side. It's more of that's like a free backpack he found on the side of the road, or he stole it from a school kid. I don't know. But this very rural chap, we can call him, it's a polite descriptor. And he just offered to take me. And, his bike could barely take his weight. But the moment I got on, all the weight on the back tyre, so that's obviously me and my 20 kilo backpack, swinging right on the back of the tyre, we were just bobbing along at like 35 max. But he saved me a solid 6k of walking. And we got to this point that I had actually planned on hitchhiking from. Because at this point, I hadn't really attempted to hitchhike. I'd just been walking, and I was hoping in the back of my mind someone would stop. So he takes me to this first border point, and immediately the first Chinese guy is an absolute dickhead, an absolute wanker with this stupid assault rifle. Basically, just to fast track, what the Chinese government does is, for Xinjiang province, to incentivize the colonial, essentially the kind of the colonial premise of the whole scenario there, they import people, Han Chinese, from the most Chinese part of China, which is everywhere around Beijing. And by import, I don't mean they're importing professionals, they're just giving big financial incentives for ordinary people to move to Xinjiang. And all the people that end up moving are just the fucking retards. It's like all the people in Europe, people that just would never be able to get a job, so they end up working in like the worst jobs possible, like call center people, the retarded, spotty 19-year-olds. They're given like police uniforms and a fucking gun, and they're so dumb and obnoxious. So this guy like is being nice enough to like take me to the border, and then because they see him with me, they fucking grab him off and like say, "Oh, get inside," and they're pointing their gun, and just the guy's being a fucking wanker, honestly. But I would say he's the only Chinese police wanker that I've experienced thus far. But it was just really sad because the guy had obviously done a really good deed, and he's probably never going to pick up another traveller again because of that experience. In the end, they only kept him for like 3-4 minutes, but it's enough to kind of put people off from doing such nice deeds again. However, from this point on, everything was great. All the other police were super polite. In the end, they came out and they said, "Oh, you're walking. Please take a seat." They're always very polite for the most part. I have to say, Chinese police are really, really nice, ordinarily. And he said, "Look, I'm really happy to just ask a truck driver for you, and they'll take you all the way to the border. I'll just tell them to do it." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's bloody brilliant," because from here on now, it's still around 70 kilometers. So I never obviously would have made it. I probably would have overstayed my visa. And on that point, I did Google what would happen if I overstayed my visa, and it would seem that they wouldn't fine you, though they could. They'd just give you a warning and it would be okay. And I did have some kind of valid reasons for obviously being late with the issue, the debacle that happened in Kashgar with the Uyghur kind of fucking mafia, we can call them. So that was great, yeah. And within 3 minutes, he stopped a truck. The Chinese driver asked if I could pay 51, which was exactly 600 Kyrgyz. So that was great. I gave him 600 Kyrgyz, so down to 2,000 at that point. And then that guy drove me all the way to the passport, the final frontier, let's say. So the actual place where you get stamped, and then after that there is a 10k no man's land, which you're not permitted to walk in. So this is where the story gets interesting. And then after that, when you arrive in Kyrgyzstan, the Kyrgyz official borderline doesn't have a passport office or anything. It's then a road for 5k's all the way to the actual passport place. And we're at the highest point now in terms of altitude. It is freezing. Everything is covered in snow. It is absolutely brutal. So he drops me off and he gets to proceed, and I get detained. And by detained, that's a strong word. I'm just kept in a room, an old shabby kind of slightly bigger than a cloakroom, let's say, with a fucking heater which has lost its footstool and is rusted and is only blaring out heat from certain parts of its frame. And, like I said, with respect to the previous border, it's just all young, acne-ridden, spotty Han Chinese that all look like they have autism. I'm not joking. They are the most fucking retarded people I've ever seen in my life, and they're not mean people. They're by no means horrible people. They're all very, very nice, very pleasant. They're really interested in the fact that obviously you're a foreigner, and I was reciprocating. I was asking them all kinds of questions about their country, which they're very content with. But in the end, this went on for 3 hours. It went on for 3 hours, and it went on for so long that the actual bus, I saw the bus arrive, which had obviously left a lot later than I did. But actually, comically, I ended up getting across the border before the bus because they cross-check every passenger on the bus. And if one person has an issue, of course, everyone has to wait. That's the kind of policy of China. So 3 hours of me rotating between the 3 guards who would come in for a bit of warmth and then go back outside to their duties, and they'd all be asking me kind of the same questions because I think they have a script. They're kind of expected to ask certain interrogatory questions, let's say. And every time I'd look at my phone, they'd literally put their face in my phone. Like, "What are you looking at? What's your WhatsApp message?" Just stuff like that. So 3 hours went by. I was shattered. It was cold even with the heater, and I was getting pissed off actually because 3 hours taking the piss. So in the end, after 3 hours, I went into the examination room, and thankfully I wasn't to be examined. I think that's worded, it means more interviewed rather than examined. So they stamped my passport, and I used the toilets there, by the way. The worst toilets I've ever seen in my life. It was disgusting. The entire Chinese space is an absolute disgrace to China. China so far, before that point, everything had been great. Everything is clean. Everything is so efficient, well kept. The infrastructure is phenomenal. This place was the biggest shithole. It made Afghanistan look like the Ritz. The toilet had never been cleaned, ever. It's insane. I've never seen such a place. It was grimy. The Kyrgyz side was like 5-star after that. So I get my passport stamp and they say, oh, you can go out now. And just as I go out, this big grunt of a man, the boss of the entire immigration post, comes in, and he looks more Kyrgyz than Chinese, actually. And he starts shouting and blah, and tells me to get back inside and all this shit. And it turns out, you can't walk. And they didn't have transport to take me. And I was saying, I'll just ask the bus or whatever, or the trucks, and they're like, oh, we can't do that, even though I literally just did that. So I had to wait longer. And in the end, I got a private police escort, just me and this guy chain smoking, like all of the Chinese guys do, for the 10Ks. And I see what they mean now about not being able to walk that, because what it is it's a one-lane scenario where the vehicles don't go back and forth equally between Kyrgyzstan and China. It's rotational, so the vehicles depart on the Chinese side for a certain amount of time, and then all vehicles cease, which is basically why I also waited for a very long time, because that's what was happening on my end, while Kyrgyz trucks and convoys were incoming. And because of that, the lane is really narrow, and it's all covered in snow, and there's barbed wire on each side. It's really only big enough for one truck. So when they originally said, oh, it's super dangerous, you can't walk, I just thought it was bullshit. And to be honest, it still would have been fine, but I see what they mean. There's more logic behind that than, let's say, not being able to walk in the other parts of the highway. So I got taken to the checkpoint, and because of course the Chinese side had been halted and the Kyrgyz side at that point had been halted as well, but no trucks were going down to the actual passport post, which was 5Ks down the hill from the actual line. So I was left in the freezing cold, and so I just started walking again. As I started walking, there was only one truck that was actually still waiting to pass down, and the guy ended up stopping. And very kindly, we got talking. He was actually a really nice guy, quite a young driver again. I've noticed a trend here. A lot of the time it's the younger drivers. And then he said, oh, I'm going to go to Naren if you want to go. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Tashrabat. He said, yeah, I can take you, no worries, man, for free. So I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So we get to the passport post on the, so this is, we got no man's land. That ends with like basically just a gate, which is like you're in Kyrgyzstan. And then there's 5Ks of road to another gate where the passport stuff begins. And that entire stretch of road was completely chock-a-blocked with a queue of trucks trying to go up the hill into China, right? So I start, I'm in this truck and he takes me down. And we get to the gate and we're the first. And just as we arrive, the guy closes the gate. And so the driver shouts out, oh no, I got a tourist. So the guy puts a hold on it and says, okay, you can come, but the truck has to wait. And so I said to the guy, oh, I'll be back soon, not knowing that would never happen. And started walking with this military guard who spoke English. It was very professional. Like, he looked like a fucking special forces guy. Honestly, his entire demeanor was just brilliant. And I said, oh, so after I get my stamp, can I go back? He's like, well, no, because now that gate's going to be closed for 3 hours. And then, of course, we have to process the freight that the guy's carrying. So it would be like 8 hours. So I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I'll be walking again then. So I get my passport stamp, everything on the Kyrgyz side, clean, professional. They had a restaurant. The toilets were, for a truck stop, passport terminal, the toilets were completely clean. They even had soap. Amazing. And the guy that stamped my passport, just so professional, fluent in English. Everything just was perfect. Again, Kyrgyzstan's my favourite country, and just it's such a pleasure to be able to substantiate that with objective truths. It was a brilliantly managed border post, but now I have an issue. There's no trucks leaving, so I think, well, I can stay here. I was booked into Naren originally from the 2nd to the 5th where I am now, but I wanted obviously to do Tashrabat, so I was like, okay, I still have technically enough time to do it. And I do what I do best, and I just like walking. Yeah, it's not the most sensible idea. Logically, I should have stayed in the truck stop where loads of people are still having their trucks processed, and trucks would, of course, be inbound 3 hours from then. I wouldn't have to walk in the freezing cold. We're not at the highest altitude, and there's a restaurant, there's clean toilets, all that kind of stuff. But I'm just like, no, I just got to keep going. I've already, committed now. I know I'm in the safe zone. I've left China. The rush technically is over, but I just wanted to keep walking. So I started walking again. And this time on the Kyrgyz side, there is nothing. It is barren wilderness, peaks of snow, pretty much all the way to, well, the first town. I think it's, a 1.5, 2 hour drive of just freezing cold, snowy peaks. So I started walking, and I'm walking for like 20 minutes, and it's just, I'm starting to regret every footstep I take. I'm like, I could just go back now. There's a restaurant there, there's trucks. Obviously, I could just ask people, someone's going to take me. But I'm just so stubborn, I just have to keep walking. I also noticed, by the way, as a little side note, again, to do with the cleanliness, they'd actually set up like trash cans along the road, and people had very, in an organised fashion, dumped all their trash around the can, which ordinarily you don't see international borders, even in the cleanest countries, you usually see trash everywhere. So I'm quite impressed with that. It's clearly an agenda to clean the place up. Anyway, I digress. So I kept walking, and I'm walking and I'm walking and walking. I decided in the end I'm just going to stop after like 30 minutes, because if I can't get a hitch, it's now getting really late, of course. I think by this point it was 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Chinese time, which was 4 p.m. Kyrgyz time, but then it would get dark in 3 hours when I crossed. So yeah, so I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting for like 20 minutes, and then a driver stops, and it's another young driver, and he must have been like, I think, he told me he was 23 and he had braces on, and he just, let's go. I said, I'm going to Tashkent. He's like, no problem, go along the way. So I took loads of the videos that I'm going to upload on this channel. You may have already seen them through the window of his vehicle. Just the views were absolutely magnificent. I think it's one of the most majestic landscapes I've ever seen in my life, and it's incentivized me more to visit some other more rural areas of Kyrgyzstan. And because of that, I really am going to go to the Songkul and also, not Songkul, Kalsu and Enolchek, because the scenery there was just almost like nothing else, really. It was absolutely worth the trip. Even if Tashrabat wasn't in existence, the trip would have been worth it just for the drive down, descending from that border. So as we're driving along, we're going really, really slowly because he's got quite a heavy load. I think he had dual wagons. And we also had to stop at another checkpoint, not dissimilar to what's going on in China, where on the road there's multiple points where the driver has to show his customs declaration and his passport and whatnot. And because we're driving so slowly, I didn't really account for it. It basically got dark, and I realised at this point we also lost internet connection. There wasn't any connection in that area. And I knew there were some guest houses, but I also knew they were deep in the mountains, at least a 1.5 hour hike towards Tashrabat, and there was no guarantee they'd be open anyway. And honestly, with the tiredness, not eating, pretty dehydrated, I was freezing cold, and with the temperature now plummeting at that altitude in the dark, it just wasn't seeming feasible at all. So as we approached Tashrabat, it would have been about 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. And I just looked at my offline Google Maps and saw that 10 k's further on, there was a cafe, a truck cafe, which was literally in the middle of nowhere. So I had no idea if it even existed. And then after that, there were some towns where there would have been something, which I think the driver was heading to anyway for his kit. So he pulled up at Tashrabat, and we looked down this eerie, dark, just gravel track, which went deep into the mountains. And I looked at him and I was like, nah, let's keep going. And I pointed the cafe. He acknowledged that he knew what it was. We get to the cafe, and it is your typical truck stop restaurant, just tons of trucks, sketchy looking. And I say my goodbyes to him. He was so nice. I offered him my walnuts because I had loads of walnuts I bought in Kashgar, and he's like, no. I was like, please. So I forced him to take a big handful, and then he just started giving me stuff. He gave me a can of horse meat, And then he gave me just a giant bag of toffees. And I was like, no, no, please. But he insisted. And so as I got out the truck, I said goodbye. Of course, something had to happen. I ripped open my jeans that I was wearing, or my pants that I was wearing. I actually just bought a new pair today because of that. So I ripped those open. I was like, oh, that's the worst possible time. I'm already a bit grubby. I look like such a backpacker. And now I'm going to stumble into this truck stop with a ripped pants. I look like a hobo. So I walk into this truck stop, into the restaurant area, which wasn't particularly busy, but it looked very cozy. And I walked up to the lady, trying to hide this rip on the back of my thigh. And I said, on the Google Translate, room, how much? She said 1,000. It looked worthy of 1,000, which is £9. Usually you get breakfast with that, but that wasn't included. And so she took me to the room. They got clean sheets and a clean... They didn't get a clean towel, actually, clean sheets. And they took me to the room, and it was just like, just like a 3 single beds, private room, heater, outlets, just a normal truck stop room. Obviously for truckers, I guess they'd share that room for the same price, so it was pretty cheap. So I was like, yeah, I'm really content with this. I was shattered. I was absolutely happy to pay. I gave her 1,000 straight away. She put all the sheets on and everything, and her husband was there. Or I'm assuming the husband of the owner, and he was a bit weird actually. And there's no lock on the door. And then he showed me the bathroom, which was a brand new bathroom next door. And then he said, no water. He put up the tap, and obviously they got a problem with the pipes. There's no water, so no shower, no hot water, no toilets. And he said, we have one toilet, and it's in the backyard, and it was like one of those fucking disgusting old holes in the ground at the back of the complex, because obviously the actual toilets weren't functioning because of the lack of water. And then I had to get a jug and fill up from a tank in the back of the complex some freezing ice water to brush my teeth. So after all that, I couldn't even have a shower or anything. But yeah, I thought it's nice enough to have clean sheets and a bed and to have the heat. And anyway, so yeah, I'm getting ready, and because there's no lock on the door, the guy he came at least 3 times, and at one point I was like in my boxers, and he's like looking at me in my boxers. He was such a weirdo. And anyway, after that I just crashed out and was awoken at like 2 a.m. because it's a truck stop of just basically prostitutes getting absolutely smashed, just people getting fucked. That's all I could hear. And I woke up. I set my alarm for 8:30, I think, with the intention of getting up for 9:30. So got up, took my ice water, had a bathe with that. If you can even bathe with that, it wasn't particularly comfortable. And I'd already pre-packed everything. Everything was super organised. And I just got out, walked to the road, and within like 10 minutes got a lift with these guys. 9:30 a.m. They had a 2-litre bottle of vodka, and they were offering me vodka. I refused. And they took me to Tashrabat, and then from there I walked 2 hours and 45 minutes, high speed walk, saw a gorgeous group of yaks, and some of the greatest scenery I've ever seen in my life. It was absolutely worth the trip completely. It was really one of the nicest places at, I think, the nicest time of the year. Everything about it was just fun. It was just absolutely perfect. So I got there in 2 hours and 45 minutes, picked up an Alsatian along the way. She followed me all the way to Tashrabat. I noticed the very first guest house that was on the map, there were no yurts, but I saw them taking stuff out as I walked past, which must be about 11:30. It looked like kayaks, so I thought, oh, well, it is April 1st. It's the first day of the month. Maybe this is their tourist season. And so the kayaks are going to be for the river or whatever. It turns out they weren't kayaks, so I'll explain that later. But I get to Tashrabat. I didn't see anyone along the way. One vehicle passed me, and that was it. And yeah, when I got to Tashrabat, a tourist arrived just after me, one guy and his driver. And then some police showed up just to have a look around themselves. And yeah, it was 150 to get in, and it was absolutely magnificent. It was absolutely worth every aspect of that was fantastic. It really was brilliant. And then so I decided to walk back. So I walked back, and then that took 4 hours, and the last hour and a half was hell, I promise you, because I'd already been hiking the day before for 20 Ks. I'd been hardly had any sleep, all these kinds of stuff, the stress, everything. my feet were destroyed, and the last hour and a half of that walk was brutal. I had to stop so many times. And the dogs were following me, and the female shepherd, she picked up another shepherd or half shepherd at the Tashrabat. And so they were now following me all the way to the road. And the closer I got to the road, the more I was concerned that, like, oh no, I don't want to take them away from their bliss, the heaven they've grown up in, this gorgeous little mountain oasis. They're going to get hit by a truck. And that's all I was thinking about for the end of the journey. Until I got to the road, and then a very sketchy car stopped. I can always tell sketchy cars now. It's like a load of rough guys, tinted windows, smashed up windscreen. But I got in the car anyway, and then I said, "Oh, Narin," and they're like, "Oh, yeah." And then he turns around and he says, "Yeah, it's going to be 3,000, it's just a scam. It's crazy. It's like $40. It's the same joke." And I was like, "No." And so I said to them, "Can you just stop at the truck stop?" That I obviously came from that morning. And so it was kind of an awkward silence for like 20 minutes with these weird dudes. And then I got back to the truck stop and thankfully got out of that car. That's the only bad experience in Kyrgyzstan thus far. And then yeah, I went back to the road, and within seconds another truck picked me up, and we proceeded all the way to Narin. And yeah, and here I am now. I'm sure I've missed some of the details out, because I can't remember exactly what I was referencing in the previous video, because I only watched the end of it to kind of continue on, but I think that's pretty much the gist of it. It was absolutely, all the way from Kashgar to here was one of the most exciting trips I've had in quite some time. It was really just constant momentum, and it was fantastic. So there we go. Now I'm going to rest here in Narin for at least 4 or 5 days, and then continue on my trip all the way through Central Asia. That's the plan. So yeah, I hope that was good. I'm sure I've missed something really substantial out. I'm sure there was more to the story. The driver actually that was in the room with me in the town preceding the highway, I guess the first customs stop on the Chinese side, he messaged me actually because he was interested to know if I made Tashrabat, because we bet two drinks, and then also like because they're all from Narin, the drivers. They're obviously quite hospitable. They want to show you the town and stuff. So he actually said on WhatsApp that he'll be back in today, and he'll get me the 2 drinks that I've won from the bet. So we'll see if that happens. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's great to be back in this country. It's the best country in the world, in my opinion. And yeah, everything that I've seen thus far, re-entering, has only proven that. So I'll leave it at that. It's a really long one. I'm sure most people won't get to the end of it, but yeah, it's more for me to document it. That's what I generally use YouTube for. So I'll leave it at that.